So here's the deal, you're making art, you think it's going well, and then bang, you look at it and it's bad. It doesn't quite look like what you want it to look like. It looks off. But why? You can't quite put a finger on it. What went wrong along the way? What exactly is wrong with it? Well, how would you know if you knew you would fix it? My name is Ken and I'm a professional concept artist and illustrator. More importantly, I have a Discord server of about 2,200 members who for the last 7 years have been regularly posting their art on it asking for feedback. Suffice to say, I've seen a lot of art and I've been breaking down what makes art look off or look good for a long time. And many of them share a few common problems. Today I'm showing you exactly how to fix bad art. We're going to cut through all the BS with a step-by-step flowchart. We're breaking it down so you can stop feeling lost every time your art doesn't go as planned. It's a checklist to help you get what you imagine in your head onto the page. Now along the way, I'll be sharing some resources to help you with each aspect of troubleshooting, which will get you on the right track. I'm going to start at the top in order of importance, so let's get to it. Now the first one, and the vast majority of issues I see when giving critiques, are bad drawing problems. Now, this is what happens when an artist tries to run before they can walk. So how do you know when it's a drawing problem? If you take out all the colors and shading from a piece, if it's a painting you can trace over it, and if the line art looks off, well, it's a drawing problem. Do all your lines meet at the same vanishing points? Now this is simple to do. Find a set of parallel lines in your drawing and extend them. Eventually they'll converge at a point on your page. This is called a vanishing point. If the lines that are supposed to be parallel don't converge at one single point, well, that means your perspective is off. Now, are your characters placed in space properly? If someone is standing in front of another character, you want to make sure you indicate that clearly. Is the scale of your objects correct? Now, this is a big one. Sometimes you're so focused on drawing all the other things that you don't realize that the chair you're drawing is 10 feet tall. It happens. Now, this one ties into perspective, but are your 3D shapes drawn properly? Are you able to draw all the primitive forms, boxes, spheres, cones, pyramids, and cylinders in perspective correctly? Everything is a derivative of these primitive forms. If you can draw those well, you can draw anything. If you rotate a form in your drawing to be off axis, well, is it still accurate? Again, are they the right size? And is the cube you're drawing really equally wide on all sides? You gotta know how to do that or else it'll look off. If you're looking to improve in your perspective drawing or learn basic drawing skills, I would recommend Scott Robertson's book, How to Draw. This one's gonna stump a lot of people, but it doesn't matter how much time you spend shading the upper lip if you didn't draw the proportions of the face correctly. Do you know what I mean? And make sure that everything is correct length. And sure, you can go full Proco and study academic anatomy. I'm all for that. And study all the muscles and insertion points, but it doesn't have to be as complicated or as involved as that. Sometimes it's simply a matter of saying, hey, I'm gonna simplify the arm of my character into a cylinder. Now, does this cylinder sit properly in perspective? Is it the right length, width? Well, that's step one. You nail that and we're off to the races. Whether it's realism or manga or surrealism, good drawing is the foundation of a good image. So that's part one, and I know it's a lot. The point of this video is not necessarily to give you all the answers. It's about asking the right questions. How you go about answering these questions is up to you as an artist. All right, next one is value. Does your art look good in black and white? But before we dive into that, let's talk about something that's just as important for any artist, getting your work out there. You put the time and energy into your art, so why leave it to chance? Pixpa is the ultimate tool to showcase your work, build your brand, and increase your credibility. Think of it as your digital portfolio, your personal gallery where your art can truly shine. Having a personal website is the key to standing out. It's where you can showcase your work, connect with your audience, and build your brand. It's your own space, a place that tells your story, builds your credibility, and showcases your art the way it deserves to be seen. And speaking of connections, artist blogs are making a comeback. It's an authentic way to share your journey, your process, and your inspiration directly with your audience, fostering deeper relationships and building your brand with every post. But it's not just about showcasing your work. Pixpa gives you the power to sell your art and merch directly to your fans without relying on third-party platforms. You keep full control of your branding, your pricing, and most importantly, your profits. Whether it's prints, t-shirts, or custom designs, Pixpa makes it easy to create an online store that feels as unique as your art. No commissions, no middleman, just you and your art. Ready to take your art to the next level? Try Pixpa for free using my link below and start building the website you've always dreamed of. Once again, thanks to Pixpa for sponsoring this video. Let's get back to it. Now, this is what people think of when they say shading, but what it really is the ability to show 3D form via light and shadow without line art. Do you understand how light will interact with your subjects? Where should the shadow be? How dark should it be? How blurry should the edges of the shadow be? Well, these need to be rendered out accurately, otherwise the viewer is going to be confused as to what exactly they're looking at. And once again, everything is derivative of the primitive forms, and if you know how to shade them, well, you can shade just about anything. I would recommend you take a look at the book How to Render if you want to learn more about shading and rendering forms. Where's the light coming from? That's a question that a surprising amount of beginners fail to ask themselves. Now, how many lights are there? One light source, two light sources? And if you just randomly shade for the sake of shading, well then that's where it starts to look off. Also, what is the source of light? Maybe a campfire, a lamp, the sun is the light source in the image. If so, that's what we call motivated lighting, and that follows a whole other set of rules. Make sure your light source is actually casting light and shadow onto your subject. Like, how are you gonna paint the sun in the top left and then cast the shadow on the wrong side of the face? That's not how light works. It has to match up. Lighting can also help you tell a story. A bright sunny afternoon is gonna have a completely different mood to an overcast day. Now use that to your advantage. Now, you can check out Color and Light by James Gurney if you want to learn more about lighting. How dark are your darkest darks and how light are your lightest lights? Are you placing them in the right places? It has to make sense with whatever lighting condition you're painting. A harsh desert afternoon isn't going to have a lot of mid-grays or darks. Conversely, night shots tend not to have a lot of light values. Like a photographer, it's all about how you control your exposure settings, so to speak. Now, some of that falls under composition, so we'll get to that later. But some beginners make the mistake of not going bold enough and the painting just looks flat and washed out. Other times they abuse the entire spectrum and use the entire range of black to white on everything they're shading. Now, be cognizant of your value range and where each part of the value range is being used in your painting. Does your metal look metallic? Does your fur look furry? Different materials reflect light differently. Even under the same lighting conditions, the value range of a knight's face is going to be very different from his armor. Similarly, a rusty car and a glossy car don't look the same, so you have to treat them differently. The human eye is incredibly sensitive to these changes in material. We can spot them from like a mile away. Some things are opaque, other things are translucent and light shines through them. A lot of the believability of your art comes down to whether you're able to effectively indicate these material qualities. Your knight in shining armor isn't going to have the effect you want it to if the armor isn't shining. If you're not thinking about it and you shade the character's clothes and hair and skin in the same way, well, it's going to look off. At this point, if you've addressed all the previous points, chances are your art is gonna look pretty good. Like, it'll be technically sound, no real complaints. But technically sound isn't good enough. We want spice. It's the difference between someone playing all the right notes on Chopin's Nocturne and someone expressing themselves through the music. So where do we go from here? Let's talk composition. Now, if you're feeling overwhelmed at this point, like, I get it. This flowchart isn't magic in the sense that knowing it will automatically make you a better artist. Each of these topics takes years to master and they probably deserve a video on their own. This video is more like a diagnosis guide, but it can also be a roadmap for what you need to study. So it's okay if you feel like this is all too much at once. All right, composition. Where do you want your viewer to look on your canvas? Now, don't say everywhere because you can't have everything. Just pick one. That's your focal point. Now, is there anything else that's distracting the viewer or drawing your eye away from the focal point? Is there a random spot of contrast that it's just like in the corner pulling your focus away? Well, you gotta fix that. Figure out what's the most important thing in your scene and then do everything you can to direct our attention to it. Framing's funny because it's really obvious in hindsight. And by framing, I don't mean like frame in frame, which is a compositional tool. I mean literally where you place your subject in the scene and how close your camera is to the subject. Where in the frame are you placing things? Framing mistakes are really apparent once someone points it out. But when you're working on a piece, you don't really notice it. Like, if your character is the main focal point, then why is there so much empty space in the top right? And what's the point of all of this? This is provided you know what your focal point is, but think about whether you're framing stuff properly, if you need to crop in or zoom out or move the camera or reposition somehow. Different kinds of shots evoke different kinds of emotions. It's as much a storytelling decision as it is an aesthetic one. I'd recommend a book like Frame Ink, which shows you a rough typology of all the compositions and how and when to use them. Value structure is simply the practice of grouping large masses of subjects into similar value ranges for the sake of visual clarity. Now, it doesn't matter what these masses are, a group of trees in the horizon, a crowd of people, now as long as they read abstractly as large groups of values. It isn't something that comes very intuitively for many people because frankly, it doesn't really happen in real life. Value structure is how we editorialize reality. It's how we make sense of the visual noise in our world. A rare instance of that IRL is a foggy mountain range where you can clearly see the divisions in value as the mountains get more and more distant. It's a bit hard to get your hands on it, but Edgar Payne's composition of outdoor painting covers this. But another good way to learn and practice this is to look at Notan studies. I think I'm saying it right, Notan. It's really helpful at forcing you to simplify and organize your lights and darks, and helps you a little bit with shape design too. Damn, this flowchart is a lot longer than I thought it'd be. No. You know what? No. Oh, it's so big. That's what she said. Color is probably the one that many artists put way too much stock in. It's important, but it's not as important as good drawing, good values, and good composition. Before you even get into the entire color spectrum, let's just start by talking about temperature. Colors can be warm or cool. So the first question you need to ask yourself is, are my colors the right temperature? For instance, if your characters are sitting around a fireplace, a warm source of light, well, you need to make sure that all their colors fall under the warm spectrum of your gamut. Now, conversely, you can play around with that concept by having things that aren't lit by the fireplace cooler in tone. But above all, constantly be asking yourself, what temperature should my color be? Again, Color and Light by James Gurney is a great book for that. Just because something is blue in color doesn't mean it should be painted with blue paint. Beginners often make the mistake of painting every object in their local color. That means they paint the sky blue and the grass green and everything ends up looking too saturated. Like there's just too much going on. Looking at master paintings, if we take a color picker to them, you'll notice that a lot of the colors aren't actually what they seem. A brown object might actually be just neutral gray. This is called color theory. It's a technique they use called gamut mapping. And once you know how to do it, it feels like a cheat code because all your colors will look so cohesive and naturalistic. If you want to learn more about that, I have a video all about gamut mapping. Honestly, this one isn't super important, not as much as you think. If you've gotten all the previous things down pat, it doesn't really matter whether your character has a red cape or a blue cape. It'll still look pretty cool. These choices then come down to storytelling and art direction. Do the colors match with the story of my character? Does this color scheme fit with the tone of the world that I'm building? You know, big picture decisions which will inform your choices. This is the fun part because now you're thinking like an artist. Your color decisions are thematically driven rather than by any pre-established color scheme rule. Which, like, I think about color scheme rules are that they can be useful sometimes, but then like people fall into this trap of being too set in stone with like, okay, blue has to be complemented with orange because that's complementary and stuff like that. Color decisions should really just come down to personal preference and like cultural context as opposed to any one set rule that you see on the internet. A strong silhouette can go a long way. It helps the viewer process what's going on in your paintings. The clearer your silhouette is, the easier it is to parse. If you turn your painting black and white, how clear is that information? Are your subjects getting lost in the background? If I just turn them into pure black shapes, can I tell what you're doing? Is the action clear enough, and are the shapes interesting to look at? A good way to learn this is again by doing no-tan studies. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that right. A practice where we take paintings or photographs and then turn them into like two value compositions. So just pure black and pure white. Think about how easy and fun it is to make fan art versus like original art. That's because all the legwork of character design and backstory and character personality have all been done for you already. All you have to do is just focus on making a compelling image. Now, what if I told you that you can do this for your original work too? Master artists spend days and days doing preliminary sketches, value studies, and figuring out the costume design of their subjects before even working on the final painting. An interesting subject is easier to work with than a boring one. Perhaps you aren't spending enough time on your prep work. If you've done everything right and your image still falls flat, well, maybe it's time to rethink your designs. Sargent might be the most successful portrait artist of all time. He's goated. He had an innate ability to capture the essence of a person. His paintings, which aren't particularly detailed or intricate, seem to capture a person's likeness better than a photograph. And somehow, it was effortless. With a few loose strokes, he could render a face that looks so alive and hands that if you look closely, would seem to move. He made it look easy. The reality is that John Singer Sargent sweated over each brushstroke. He would make multiple studies of the subjects, and each time he would try out different brushstrokes and practice and practice and practice until he found the right stroke that would achieve everything he wanted it to. And then when it was time to paint the real thing, he would execute everything that he rehearsed. He made it look easy. That's the secret sauce, good mark making. That's what separates the goods from the greats. It's mastery over your medium. How much paint to load your paintbrush with, how well the colors are mixed, which direction you paint in, how much of the underpainting you want to come through. That's the icing on the cake. And it isn't exclusive to just oil painting. Each medium has its own nuances, like how thick you want a line art to be, how much variation in line with which direction you want to shade in. It can elevate your artwork to the next level, but only if you have everything else figured out. Alright, this is a big one and might be the biggest one. And the reason it isn't at the top of the flowchart is because it sits underneath everything else. That is to say, every decision you make is in support of your story. Every painting should start here. What story am I trying to tell? And the way to check if you've done a good job with every aspect of painting, be it perspective or composition, is A, is it technically sound? And B, does it support my story? Whether you're trying to capture the personality of your subject for a portrait, or the immigrant experience in abstract art, or Superman fighting Goku, it starts with a story. Technically good art will be good. You can render everything realistically and have technically perfect perspective, and people will look at it and go, huh, nice, and move on. Good art with a story is memorable. It's engaging. It's what people are drawn to. It's what people relate to. I don't know. I think it's important. Story is fun and interesting. So there you have it, a flowchart through troubleshooting and improving your art. And this this list is by no means exhaustive. We're just covering like the sort of like basic stuff. There's so much more nuance and detail. Remember, the key to fixing bad art isn't about mastering each individual element. It's about connecting them together. Good drawings, good value, composition, color, design, style, and story all work in harmony to bring your vision to life. It's not something that you can master in a week or even a year. This is a process that takes a lifetime. So don't get discouraged when your art doesn't turn out the way you imagined at first. Just take a step back, use this flowchart to guide you, and keep on refining. Every mistake is a learning opportunity, and with practice, you'll see progress, I hope. Keep on making art, and I'll see you in the next one. Robert, you shouldn't be singing this. I don't want to get copyright strikes. My A camera, which is the camera that I use most of the time. But then there's also this camera, which is the Sony ZV-1, and I use that as my second camera. And then there's also this one, which is my phone. It's the C camera. It's convenient to have. It's a phone. Let's talk about what you need to learn how to draw in order to be able to draw mechs and robots.